On today's show, Amen Thompson's season in review. The defensive phenom is blossoming into a two-way star. Expectations for him coming into this past season, the growth that we saw, and big questions moving forward, as well as our one game, one play, and one number, and his overall season grade. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube, just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we continue our Rockets review series, taking a look at year two from Amen Thompson, the blossoming two-way force, the defensive phenom, adding a bit more to his offensive bag this past season and what we can expect from him moving forward. Some of the big questions that we still have for him. We'll get into one game, one play, and one number from this past season, as well as his overall season grade, what we saw out of him, the growth, all of it. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. All right, with Amen Thompson, first off, a phenomenal year two, right? Just, I feel like on paper, right, there's very few young players, guys who are sophomores in the NBA who have quite the impact that Amen Thompson did. And after a sensational rookie year where he excelled in so many different categories, where he was used in a different way than he had ever been throughout that point in his career, right? Being played off ball quite a bit, making his impact defensively, and then finding spots to still be effective on the offensive end, despite not having the ball in his hands a lot, which was a change for him, right? And he slotted in, he played on the wings, he handled the basketball, he played as the 5 when Alperen and Sengun went down due to injury a couple of years ago. So coming into year two for Amen Thompson, the expectations were pretty high. And I think we saw so much evolution from Amen Thompson throughout the year. We saw him be deployed in a variety of roles again. Coming into the year, there was an expectation that, kind of not a matter of if, but like a matter of when Amen Thompson would kind of force Ime Udoka's hands into, inserting him into the starting lineup. If any of you remember, we did our Rockets board bets before the season, and one of the questions that we asked was, how many games would Amen Thompson ultimately start this past season? And he wound up crushing those numbers, far exceeding the numbers that we had jotted down for him. He started 42 games, and that was the high end, right? 41 plus games, like starting more than half the season was like the biggest number on that poll. Now, granted, that was as a direct result of the Jabari Smith Jr. injury, but it was one of those moments where it was just kind of like a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it allowed Ime Udoka the opportunity to shake things up, to add Amen to the starting lineup, which we all knew was going to, happen one way or the other. And so after a successful rookie season coming into year two, some of the expectations were just, okay, how much better can he get offensively? When will he become a starter? And will we continue to see those glimpses of a guy that the Rockets internally feel like has a chance to become, the face of the franchise, and one day down the line, one of the best players in the entire NBA? And I think we continue to see a lot of those glimpses, right? He finished the year on the All-NBA defensive team in just year two of his career, one of the 5 best defenders in the NBA. He's arguably already the best perimeter defender in the entire NBA. A lot of talking heads, a lot of pundits agree with that statement. So it's not even a hot take to go so far as to say that. If Victor Wembanyama didn't exist, then I feel like Amen Thompson would be in the running for DPOY each and every season. And he might still sneak 1 or 2 out throughout his career, because that's just how good he is defensively. But we knew the defensive impacts. We knew the metrics. We knew just how impactful he would be on that end of the floor, whether he's coming off the bench, whether he's in the starting lineup. And hell, he started, the final quarter of the season as a rookie, and then he was inserted into the starting lineup again in year 2 in place of Jabari Smith Jr. And now moving forward, he is a permanent fixture of the Rockets starting lineup. There's not going to be a situation where he starts the season coming off the bench again. As much fun as the Terror Twins were earlier in the season with Amen and Tari checking in together and just wreaking absolute havoc on the defensive end of the floor, it's great to see Amen Thompson take that step and now have that guaranteed starter spot moving forward within the Rockets starting lineup and just kind of within the pecking order, the hierarchy of talent on the roster. The Rockets, now that Jalen Green is gone, obviously KD is the top dog, but the priority for the young guys, right, is right there. Alperen Sengun 1A, Amen Thompson 1B, right there neck and neck for who is ultimately going to take the torch as this team's best player moving forward. It's been Alp for a couple of years, but given Amen's skill set and given the trajectory that he's on and just the exponential growth that we saw in year 2, there's a not insignificant chance that Amen Thompson potentially surpasses Alperen Sengun as far as just how good he is this upcoming season. Is it a guarantee? No. Amen Thompson still has a long way to go offensively, but even this past season, we saw him take significant strides as an offensive player. It wasn't just, park him in the corner or leave him in the dunker spot and let him be a play finisher. He did a fair amount of that. Don't get it twisted. He absolutely did a lot of that this past season. But he also was incredibly effective as an on-ball presence. He got downhill a lot. He was able to create for his teammates at a very, very high level. And when you go back and look at his stats, just his stats for the season, he averaged 14.1 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, and 3.8 assists. But you go back and look at his numbers from when he was officially inserted into the starting lineup and then didn't leave the starting lineup for the remainder of the season. So I'm going to crunch that as 37 games where he was officially he was the de facto starter for the final back half of the season. Across those games, he wound up averaging about 16 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists per contest, as well as 3 stocks per game. An effective field goal percentage of 57.3%, shot 56% from the floor. He was awesome. And he was awesome in his rookie year since being inserted into the starting lineup. And on a per minute basis, it's felt like these past 2 seasons, Amen Thompson has been flat out the most impactful player on a per minute basis for the Houston Rockets. And it's going to be really exciting to see what that looks like moving forward now that he is a permanent fixture of the starting lineup. He doesn't have to come off the bench to start the season. His role isn't going to adjust midway through the year. And the biggest thing we saw, another step forward for him defensively, earning the All-NBA honors, absolutely. But the biggest thing for Amen Thompson, he's already arguably the best defender in the NBA, best perimeter defender in the NBA, All-NBA caliber defender, all that. It's the continued growth of the offensive game. And we saw him take some significant steps forward this past season as a primary ball handler, as a three-point shooter, as a guy who could make a defense pay if they left him wide open, especially in the corners. So his three-point shooting numbers there got significantly better. And just his overall confidence, his ability to attack and get downhill and understand how he could consistently put pressure on a defense. And we saw the coaching staff, we saw Ime Udoka continue to put that faith and that confidence in Amen Thompson as the season progressed. And that's only going to get even better this upcoming year because the Rockets are putting a lot of faith in Amen Thompson as the starting backcourt mate next to Fred VanVleet. He's going to have an immense amount of responsibility, on-ball touches, reps, all of that this upcoming season. That actually leads us into the first set of our big questions for Amen Thompson coming up for this next season. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Look, if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a different service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait around? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. They have a shared inbox feature that's a total game changer. You can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And OpenPhone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com, openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, taking a look at some of the questions for Amen Thompson. We got some answers from this past season. Now, the defense was never in question with Amen Thompson. He made his mark defensively from the moment he stepped on the court as an NBA player, and he's only continued to get better in that regard. He is going to be a year in, year out All-NBA defensive team, first ballot guy. He's going to get DPOY votes. He's going to be one of the top 5 best defenders in the NBA every single season. The question marks for Amen Thompson routinely come down to what will he look like offensively? How much more can he develop? How much more will he grow? And what areas of his game can he continue to improve offensively? Now, one of those questions was kind of addressed this past season. Just the fact that Amen Thompson, a lot of people who don't really watch Amen Thompson or don't really watch the Rockets think of him as this offensive liability, a guy that isn't, he sits in the dunker spot and he gets offensive rebounds and he slashes and he can't actually self-create. That is so far from the truth, because Amen Thompson has shown an increased ability, right? A pretty good knack for being able to get downhill, get into the teeth of the defense, get inside the paint, and watching him grow in confidence in his ability to get to the paint, elevate above the defense, and then just drop in these easy, 5 to 10 footers, just inside the painted area, or getting all the way downhill and then getting to a Euro step. I want to point out, Euro steps are not easy moves to master. There's a reason you don't see guys running around the NBA doing Euro steps every other possession. It's not an easy move. The timing, the finesse, the misdirection behind it. And for Amen Thompson to be able to pair his ridiculous athletic ability with the finesse and the skill that it takes to be able to Euro on guys, that's huge. It's low-key, the Amen Thompson Euro step is kind of like his go-to move right now, where he'll Euro in the paint. And sometimes he Euros into that one-legged kind of floater, or he'll Euro past a guy and get right to the rim for a layup or a dunk. It's really impressive that he's got that in his bag as a reliable go-to move getting downhill in just year 2. But where things start to get really interesting is how much more effective can he become offensively? And there's 2 limiting factors for Amen Thompson. And one of them, I think, is more significant than the other. It's something we've talked about in the past. So I'll talk about the one that I think people focus on a little bit too much, and that's the outside shooting. Amen Thompson, and this might be a spicy take, I don't know. Amen Thompson could stunt his development right now as an outside shooter, and he's still an absolute terror of a player. He could not develop any further as an outside shooter, just be an okay corner 3-point shooter, a not so great above the break shooter, and never going to be a guy that's, going to dice you up off the dribble, get to a step back 3, that kind of thing. And he'd be just fine as a player because of how impactful he is defensively, because of what he provides rebounding, facilitating, all of it, right? He's like a souped up, more athletic version without the mental baggage of a Ben Simmons. That's kind of crazy to think about, right? Ben Simmons without the mental barriers is an all-NBA caliber player. And so the thing is Amen Thompson is an absolute basketball sicko, right? He's a psycho. And because of that, I have every bit of confidence in the world that he's going to continue to work on his outside shot. And I don't know that he'll ever be, a truly transcendent outside scorer, but he doesn't need to be, right? If he can just get to a point where he keeps defenses honest from the perimeter, the becoming a better corner 3-point shooter was a step in the right direction, right? Seeing him actually hit shots consistently from that area of the floor was encouraging, because it makes defenses question, right? Do we leave him in the corner? Do we close out on him? If we close out on him, is he going to slip back door and get to the rim for an easy cut or lob or an offensive rebound? It gives him more versatility in his offensive repertoire. Now, we did see some confidence and some growth from him in the ability to kind of walk a guy down. And if a guy is really sagging off of him, or there were times where opposing defenses parked a big man on Amen Thompson, we would see him kind of walk the guy down and get to that kind of free throw line extended area, 15 to 18 feet, and then hit a pull up midi. I don't know if that's ever going to become a permanent fixture of his game, but the confidence to be able to take those shots and hopefully moving forward, the ability to hit them at a decent enough rate will continue to open things up for him. But the outside shooting is certainly a big question for him. Even if you get Amen Thompson to a place where he's like low 30s from the perimeter, coupled with everything else that he can do offensively, I mean, dude, that is basically a top 10 player in the NBA. Truly, it is. But the bigger, more limiting factor, I feel like, even more so than the outside shooting, is going to be his work as a ball handler. And this is where the Rockets are showing they're showing a lot of confidence by making him the clear-cut number 2 ball handler on the team behind Fred VanVleet in the starting lineup, in the starting backcourt with Steady Freddie, because there were times this past season where Amen Thompson's ball handling looked a little suspect, right? He doesn't always look the most comfortable, especially in the half court. Hell, even in transition sometimes, right? The dude's such a blur that sometimes he's taken off in transition and he doesn't have a firm handle on the ball, or he's careening down the court, going 0 to 100 a little bit too quick. Now, he's not quite on like the Russell Westbrook tier of like erratic offensive behavior. He's a little bit more measured and controlled than prime Westbrook was. But there are moments, especially in the half court, where the handle, looks a little loose, or he looks a little unsure of himself at times, or, if a defender does stop his first move, then maybe he doesn't have like a go-to move or a counter or the ability to, reload and then attack again. And that's going to be the biggest thing for him moving forward, is becoming a more confident ball handler and getting to the point where he can not only rely just on his ridiculous, like 99.99th percentile athleticism to get to his spots on the floor, to manipulate the defense the way that he wants to, but being able to have the ball on a string, being able to be a bit more crafty, being able to add more to his game than just the athleticism. And it feels, honestly, saying it that way feels like a disservice, because he doesn't just rely on his athleticism. Amen Thompson's an incredibly smart player, right? The dude is super high IQ. He's got like a supercomputer processor for a brain, the way that he reads the game, understands where and how to move without the basketball offensively as a cutter, playing out of the dunker spot, playing out of the corners, setting a screen and operating out of the short roll. There's so many different ways that Amen Thompson has been and can be continue to be deployed offensively. I know that we talked about this in the Sengun review episode, but thinking about the 2-man game between Amen Thompson and Kevin Durant is going to be ridiculous. Like, think about Amen Thompson setting a screen for KD and being able to receive the ball in the short roll because the defenders have to worry about KD pulling up from 3. Or flip it around. Amen Thompson is the primary ball handler and KD sets a screen, and the defenders have to make sure that KD can't flare out for an easy 3-pointer. So Amen Thompson gets a wide open, straight line drive down to the rim. Like, there's so many different exciting things that the Rockets are going to be able to accomplish this next season by having KD added to this squad. But for Amen Thompson, that is my number one thing for him. My number one big question for him going to this next year is, what will he ultimately look like as a ball handler? We know that this offseason in particular, he's been working with the guard whisperer and really working on his ability as a perimeter player, as a primary ball handler, as a lead guard. And these are all things that are going to be front and center on display, for better or for worse, this next season, because the Rockets can't get 48 minutes of Fred VanVleet. And there are still some significant question marks about Reed Shepherd as well. So Amen Thompson needs to be able to deliver as the Rockets' secondary de facto ball handler behind Fred VanVleet. And he did that a little bit this past season, right? The Rockets very gradually, as the season progressed, entrusted him with more and more on-ball responsibility. And you could see the glimpses, the windows, the reasoning behind it as they kind of weaned. They took some reps away from Jalen. They took some reps away from Fred, and they made sure to give Amen Thompson, a little bit of time on the ball. Probably not as much as, a lot of us would have liked to see this past season, but they did just enough to inspire some confidence and to get a glimpse at it moving forward. Because look, if it had been an absolute train wreck in the moments where Amen Thompson was entrusted to run the offense, then maybe the Rockets would have gone out and gotten a little bit more guard depth this past offseason. Maybe they would have gotten another ball handler, another creator, somebody that could help be the true backup to Fred VanVleet, or offset some of the deficiencies. But they have every reason to believe that Amen Thompson can and will be that lead ball handler or at least the secondary ball handler behind Fred VanVleet. Eventually, though, with the vision down the line, whether it's a year from now, a couple years from now, whatever, that Amen Thompson has the ability to be a true lead guard in the NBA with his ridiculous, 6'7", 6'8" frame, the insane athleticism, the court vision, all of it. That is a true terror and somebody that is a matchup nightmare and is going to be really, really hard for other teams to try and contain on a night-to-night basis. So big questions for Amen Thompson moving forward. The outside shooting, the ball handling. Coming up, we're going to get to his 1 game, 1 play, 1 number from this past campaign, as well as his overall season grade. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, if you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family, maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come out with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets so fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer that you get to first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying your tickets. Now, look, my favorite thing about Game Time, and this applies to whether you're going to a baseball game or maybe you're trying to get Rockets tickets for next season, or it could be going to a concert or a comedy or theater event, whatever events you're trying to go to. Game Time is fully transparent from start to finish. They don't hit you at the very end with hidden fees or digital handling charges, right? Those are the worst from other ticket sellers. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's get to our 1 game, 1 play, 1 number from this past season for Amen Thompson. And again, if you have your 1 game, your 1 play, your 1 number from this past season, I want your thoughts in the YouTube comments. You don't have to do all 3. You can just pick which one. If there's a significant game or play or number that stands out to you, then I want to hear about it in the comments. The 1 game for Amen Thompson, there were so many good games to choose from, but the one that I keep coming back to, and the one that I think really showcases what we can hopefully come to expect from Amen Thompson moving forward, and the fact that it feels like he is on an all-star trajectory at a minimum. It very much feels like he's headed for at least a version of all-star consideration this next season. Now, the Rockets may get ultimately screwed because if they've got 3 all-star caliber players in Kevin Durant, Alperen, Sengun, and Amen Thompson, one of them might ultimately get the squeeze, or maybe the Rockets get 3 all-stars on the all-star team. Who knows? But the game that I keep coming back to for Amen Thompson, Warriors at Rockets, Game 7. That game was eye-opening, which is weird because Amen Thompson's had a bunch of eye-opening, kind of jaw-dropping moments throughout his career already. But that game in particular was eye-opening, not just because, first, just go through his actual stat line from that game. He was easily the best. He was the best player on the floor for the Rockets. 24 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, had a steal, had a block, no turnovers, was 9 of 16 from the floor. It's perfect, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. And on top of the offensive production, he helped keep Steph Curry in check. The issue in that game and the reason that game went by the wayside. First off, in the first half of that game, Steph Curry was just 1 of 7 shooting. Now, he did start to heat up a little bit in the third quarter where he went 2 for 3, but it wasn't until that fourth quarter where Amen Thompson had the calf cramp, whatever, and had to sit down, where he collapsed on a play and then was slow getting back on defense and then couldn't keep up with Steph Curry and he bombs a 3-pointer. It wasn't until Amen Thompson literally could not go any further, he had worn himself out, that Steph Curry popped off. And that game, just from a defensive perspective, showed just how important Amen Thompson was, how integral he was to trying to slow Steph Curry down in that series. But also, it illustrated his ability, right? Because he struggled in the first half of that Warriors series. He did. Lights were a little bright. first 3 games or so, he really struggled. Game 4, he started to really find his way. And then game 5, he was awesome. Game 6, he was still really, really solid across the board. And then game 7, he was the best player on the floor. And that's what you want to see out of a blossoming star in Amen Thompson. You want to see him adjust to the pressure of the playoffs, which he absolutely did, right? Throughout the series. And then in that game 7, we've referenced this a few different times on this show, but there was that moment in the third quarter where he was just dominant, where he was the best player on the floor in a game that featured Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. Amen Thompson was the best player on the floor for both teams in that third quarter. He had 10 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was dominant, got downhill repeatedly. And I've referenced this a lot, but is that moment where it's like things slowed down for Amen Thompson, where he was like Neo in the Matrix, and he just was able to figure out how to manipulate things, how to get downhill, that nobody on the Warriors could stop him. And for that being like the final game that we saw out of Amen Thompson this season, I'm so encouraged that he can hopefully take that confidence, that mentality, that aggression, and come into this next season knowing, hey, these reps, right? Jalen Green's not here anymore. All those reps, all those shot attempts, like, yeah, KD's going to get a handful of those, right? And maybe Alpi has a slightly bigger role, but that's the Rockets' big 3 now. That big 3 is Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun, and Amen Thompson. He is going to be stepping into a much bigger role, a role where he is featured offensively. And that's going to be the cool part, is seeing lineups and offensive sets where Amen Thompson is the focal point, either as the primary ball handler, getting downhill, playing with 5-out spacing, having carte blanche to do whatever he wants to call the shots on the floor when Fred isn't out there, or even moments where Fred is out there and Fred's playing off ball to him. That Warriors game felt like, weirdly enough, like I don't want to call it like a breakout performance, but that felt like the Amen Thompson has arrived moment, and he's not going away. He's going to be a problem moving forward. And yeah, man, that Warriors series was something else. And that game 7 was kind of crazy. So that's my one game for Amen Thompson. And there were a lot of good games to choose from. I could have gone with the road win against the Cavs where he blocked Evan Mobley. That was a sick game, had a monster triple-double in that one. His insane game against Boston, which is actually where we're going to go next, because my one play is the game winner from the road win against the Boston Celtics. And look, you know, after going into Boston the year before, Ime's first trip back to Boston after everything happened up there, and getting just absolutely smacked around by the Celtics on their way to their title run, it was really cool to see the Rockets just go on the road. And I mean, they went on the road and they beat all the top teams in the NBA. They beat the Thunder. They beat the Cavs. They beat the Celtics. Like, they were the only team in the NBA for a while. I think one other team might have sneaked in a win there, but they were the only team in the NBA for a significant chunk of the season to have beaten both the Thunder and Cavs on the road. And you add the Celtics to that mix, right? They weren't backing down from anybody. And Amen Thompson in that game against Boston was absolutely sensational. He wound up having arguably the best game of his career. Now, there may have been other better games statistically, whether he, got a triple double or was, racking up the steals and blocks a little bit more, but that was his career high scoring wise, 33 points on 13 of 19 shooting. He was 1 of 2 from downtown, 6 of 8 at the free throw line, had 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 1 turnover. And of course, the game winner, the first game winner of his career, where he had this to say in the post-game interview.
That felt great. I knew that going in. I knew this in off rip. That's my first game winner. I feel like Kobe.
Oh, so innocent, man. I'm gonna miss Dylan Brooks, man. Dylan was always good to hype up the guys when they were cooking. But that was a special moment, right? Amen Thompson dominated that game, and he was given the green light, right? That was the trust from the coaching staff and from Ime Udoka to give him the ball and say, go win us the game, right? So that was a big moment for him in his career, and I'm sure we're going to see plenty more of those moments down the line as well. For Amen Thompson's one number, and I really went back and forth on this one. Actually, before I get to the one number, I want to give an honorable mention to his one play. Because how can we not talk about him ragdolling Tyler Hero across Toyota Center? Oh, man. just the image of him grabbing Tyler Herro by the jersey and then just like sliding him across the TC floor like a sack of potatoes lives rent free in my mind. I think about it at least like once a week. So I it's not really a play is the problem, but it also speaks volumes about this Rockets team, about Amen's mentality, right? He's not a soft player. He's not going to take crap from anybody. He'll stick up for himself, for his teammates. He's ready to throw down at a moment's notice. Hell, there was a moment in the playoffs, right, where Dillon Brooks had to come in and play peacemaker between Amen Thompson and I want to say it was Gary Payton II. It was either Gary Payton II or Pat Spencer. But when Dillon Brooks has to come in and play peacemaker between you and somebody else, you know that you've got a little bit of, unhinged mentality to you, a bit of an edge. And so people might be worried, oh my God, do the Rockets still have the toughness? What are they going to do without Dillon Brooks? Amen Thompson and, Jabari and Tari are going to bring plenty of toughness to this Rockets team, right? They got 2 years to learn from one of the best to ever do it in Dillon Brooks as an enforcer, as a tone setter. And they'll be able to carry that tradition moving forward easily, I think. For his one play, I went back and forth on this number for a little bit. And one number that I went to that I want to say it didn't, I don't want to say it surprised me, but it's a number that I fully expect to be drastically different this next season. Drives per game, 7.5. Amen Thompson had 7.5 drives per game this past season. That was fourth on the team behind Jalen, Fred, and even Alperen Sengun. And so I fully expect that number to jump up considerably. Now, by comparison, and this is NBA.com tracking data, so tracking data take with a slight grain of salt, but SGA led the NBA in drives per game at 20.6 drives per contest. Then, like some of the other top guys in order, you got Jalen Brunson, 17.8, Zion, 17.7, Cade Cunningham, 17.1, Trae Young, 17.1, Ja Morant, 16.8, Luka, 16.1, De'Aaron Fox, 15.2, LaMelo Ball, 15.1, James Harden, 14.8. The list goes on and on and on. The thing that all of these guys have, right? Every single one of these guys that are at the top of this drives per game list, they are all generally, with the exception of maybe Zion, although point Zion is very much a thing, they're all the primary facilitators for their team. They're all the primary ball handlers. They're all these guards and wings that get downhill at an elite level, and they create at an elite level for their teammates. For Amen Thompson to take that next step in his game, for him to level up again offensively, it's not just about his ability as an offensive player. It's not just about his ability to get downhill and score himself or score in transition. It's about his ability to leverage his scoring gravity and elevate his teammates, right? And I really do feel like we're going to see this next season a lot of lineups that are catered to Amen Thompson specifically. We're talking like 5-out spacing, lineups where Amen Thompson has the ball in his hands and gets to go downhill with shooters surrounding him, gets beautiful kick-out passes, or he just gets all the way to the rim or gets fouled and sent to the free throw line, right? Think it's going to be like the Russell Westbrook, Giannis Antetokounmpo special, where you put shooters around those guys, you clear out the lane, and you let them just drive and use their insane athleticism to put pressure on the defense. The recipe, the blueprint, it's really that simple. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, a lot of lineups that feature Amen Thompson as the focal point, as the driving force of the offense. And we're going to see a lot of beautiful kick-out passes to Kevin Durant, to Jabari Smith Jr., to Fred VanVleet, to Dorian Finney-Smith, all these guys, all this shooting that is now on the roster. So that drives per game number, I don't know if it's going to, I'm not going to go so far as to say that it's going to like double in, I don't think he's going to suddenly shoot up to like 15 drives per game, but I fully expect that number to rise considerably. And I would argue that Amen Thompson will easily be the leader in drives per game for the Rockets next season. Because at the end of the day, KD is not a downhill force. He's not a guy that gets downhill and drives a ton. Alperen Sengun drives a fair amount for a big man, and Fred VanVleet drives a fair amount for the primary ball handler and the guy that runs the majority of pick and roll for the team. But Amen Thompson will absolutely lead this team in drives per game next season. And the more drives that he gets, right, if he can get up to that, 14, 15, 16, 17 drives per game range, along with other elite company, elite guards like SGA, like Jalen Brunson, like Cade Cunningham, like Trae Young, then it's going to pay dividends for his teammates, and it'll show that, hey, he's not only driving every single time, but he's also turning those drives into legitimate points and scoring opportunities either for himself or for his teammates. So I fully expect that number to increase considerably next season. Again, I want your 1 game, 1 play, 1 number in the YouTube comments. For his overall season grade, to wrap things up, I might get some flack for this because I gave Alpi a B+, but I'm going to give Amen Thompson an A-. Like, the dude's just in year 2 of his career. He's already cemented himself as one of the best defenders in the NBA and arguably the best defensive or best perimeter defensive player in the NBA. He earned All-NBA defensive first team honors in a really stacked defensive landscape, right? Like, there are so many good defenders in today's NBA. So to be one of the legitimate 5 best defenders as voted by, a panel of I'm not gonna say panel of experts, as voted on by the voters is considerable as far as milestones are concerned. And you see now, like, part of I think why he was, why there was a little bit left to be desired, maybe at times offensively, is just lack of overall, developmental reps to be had on offense, because guys like Jalen Green needed his touches and things like that. Now Amen Thompson is going to be a focal point. And so now this upcoming season will be his chance to really showcase himself, showcase his talent, and prove that he can be more than just, this Swiss Army knife, Andre Iguodala-esque, complimentary piece, and that he can truly be a blue chip cornerstone prospect and a guy that can elevate everybody on the team and be a legitimate go-to guy right there with Alperen, Sengun, and Kevin Durant. So I think there's a very legitimate chance that he has to make the All-Star team this next season. Maybe it comes down to just the Rockets getting squeezed and not being able to have all 3 All-Stars out there, but he's already an All-NBA caliber defender. He's growing offensively. He has another big step to take offensively this next year, but there's a world where Amen Thompson could easily average like 20, 10, and 5 this next season. Like, that's not even crazy because he just averaged 16, 9, and 5 as a starter this past season. Few extra points, 1 extra rebound. Hell, maybe even some more assists. Maybe I'm shortchanging him. Maybe he's 20, 10, and 7 this next year, potentially. I still think at his peak, when he's truly like settled into his prime, a few years from now, Amen Thompson is going to be like a 25, 12, and 7 to 8 kind of guy, which is a top 10 player in the NBA, point blank, period. So with that, Amen Thompson, A- for this past season. I want your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on his year 2. What are your expectations out of him going into this next season? All that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show, listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.